Miss Lizzie. I don't ever smoke the dizzy, but we can always share some ditsies. It's just a cup in time. This song doesn't have to rhyme. Life's all of us, not every moment we can be feeling fine. I wanna share a moment, just a second if you will, maybe even a cup of thrill. We could share this performance. It's tea time, come sit with me.
Well, welcome, guys. Yes, we do have glitches going on today. I guess it's that extra heat out there, so a little glitch doesn't hurt anybody, right? That's where the bloopers come in. So welcome, everybody. We are here for evening tea time, and tonight I have Mark Morton in the house with me, and we're going to talk about his book, let me get it, Cupboard Love. But we're going to be talking about a lot of different things. We're going to be talking about history, food, culture, all of that good stuff. So if you're interested in knowing tonight's topic, stay tuned and join us. Leave your comments and questions, support, all that good stuff. Before we get started, you know how Miss Liz rolls. We do the disclaimer, and then we do a little bit of intro of the guest, and then we get the guest in the house and we spill some tea. We do not serve a beverage. We serve real life stories and books and all of that good stuff out there. So disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz, myself, is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment during the live broadcast, please grant StreamYard permission to display your name at StreamYard.com. Miss Liz's Tea Time is a global platform dedicated to sharing real-life stories, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations that inspire awareness, healing, and connection. Please be advised that all the content brought forward during any Tea Time show is presented in good faith and health. However, discussions may include opinions, beliefs, and perspectives that do not necessarily represent the views of Miss Liz or Tea Time platform. Information shared by guests is based on their own experiences and is perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All guests, viewers, and participants are responsible for using their own judgment when considering any action or decision that may relate to this discussion. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to trauma, abuse, grief, mental health, and other emotional triggering subjects. Listeners and viewers' discretion is strongly advised. Tea Time with Miss Liz is open discussion forums designed to offer insight, inspire awareness, and create connection. It is not a substitute for professional, medical, legal, or therapeutical advice. If you require professional support, please seek assistance from qualified professionals or trusted resources in your area. If you have any questions regarding this disclaimer or content of the discussion, you are welcome to contact me at my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com or check out my link tree at Miss Liz's Tea Times. By choosing to participate in tonight's show with comments, views, these live shows, you're acknowledging and accept this disclaimer. Your participation is entirely voluntarily. Miss Liz welcomes you. Join the conversation with an open heart, and if at any time you feel this platform is not right for you, I respect those wishes and will welcome you back whenever you are ready. Tea Time with Miss Liz is serving truth and awareness one cup of tea at a time. Let me get a little bit on my guest tonight. So tonight I have Mark Morton. He's an author, visionary, and voice for change. Tonight, we welcome a man whose words and work stands as a testament to the power of living with purpose. Mark Morton is more than an author. He's a storyteller with a mission, weaving truth, experience, and insight into every page he writes. His work reaches beyond entertainment, speaking directly to the heart, challenging perspectives, and inspiring transformation. With a background rich in lived experience and a deep understanding of the human condition, Mark brings authenticity to every conversation. His journey reflects resilience, curiosity, and a relentless drive to shine a light on both the struggles and triumphs that shape us. Whether through his books, public speaking, or community engagements, he has become a voice that resonates with those seeking hope, perspective, and real change. It is my absolute honor to welcome to Tea Time with Miss Liz, Mark Morton. So let me get Mark in here and let's spill some tea. Welcome, Mark.
Oh, thank you. That was a nice introduction. I hope I can live up to it.
Right? I maybe I do too much research, right?
It's good. Yeah.
Well, welcome, Mark. What did I miss without the introduction? Could you share a little bit with the listeners out there?
No, I think you captured everything pretty well. I mean, I guess I could say that, yeah, I'm an author. I, uh, I, I wrote and had published by traditional presses 4 nonfiction books. And then my wife and I adopted 4 kids, older kids. And so that brought my writing career to a halt for about 17 years. And then once the kids were older and more independent, started writing again. And the first book I wrote after that was a young adult novel. So I turned to fiction. And I guess the most recent work I have is actually also my first one, because the first book I wrote was the one called Cupboard Love, a dictionary of culinary curiosities. And that came out in 19.
1996.
Yes, thank you. And then the second edition came out, I think, in 2003 or something. And then
2004.
2004, thank you.
I did my homework.
I need somebody to remember my life. And then a third edition just came out. So it was kind of out of print for about 30 years. And a publisher thought, well, this is a good book to bring back into print. So that's what happened. And yeah, I'm really proud of that book. It took an immense amount of research. It's a book about the origins and histories of food words and cooking words. And I mean, it's the kind of book that I couldn't write now because, I'm older. My memory is not what it used to be. And I just couldn't contain in my head, all these facts that I was able to do back then. So I think that's also why I turned to writing fiction, because I can draw my imagination rather than my powers of analysis or, whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, when I did my research, it says there's 1,000 food words, and I'm like, wow, 1,000.
Yep.
So, is there any words that you can bring up that maybe none of us have heard?
Well, sure. Well, I'll start with the very first one that occurred to me, and this one I was probably about 9 or 8. I remember this so vividly. Coming home from school, getting off the bus. I grew up on a farm. Coming in the house, and taking off my coat and stuff. And then I wanted a snack. So I went and I opened up the cupboard and I'm looking inside. And all of a sudden I say, cupboard, cup, board. This is a board for cups, and it hit me that that's where that word came from. And, we get so used to language that we often don't think about the origins or where something came from. So an example, what's an example? How about something like saute? When you saute something, it basically means a fancy word for frying something. It comes from a French word that means to jump, to flip. Sorry.
We're flipping the camera.
Yeah, for effect. And it's the same word that you see in somersault. So saute and somersault are actually related to each other. They both come from the same French source.
So they're almost like cousins.
Exactly. That's the metaphor that I like to use. That words. Well, I mean, ultimately, likely, all language, all words come from some original guttural sound that some Neanderthal or Homo sapien made, who knows how many tens of thousands of years ago. So in a sense, all words are related, just like all humans are related. Of course, some are more closely related than others. Some are kind of like first cousins, and some are like second cousins, and so on and so on. And the great thing about the English language, I mean, I'm in love with the English language. All languages are great, of course, but I think this is more true of the English language than any other language I know of, which is that it has been formed by so many different other languages. Like originally it was a Germanic language, Anglo-Saxon, Old English. And then I guess the first thing that happened was the Vikings came, and then they conquered northern England and Scotland, and they introduced a bunch of Scandinavian words. And then after that, there was the Norman conquest. And so a whole bunch of French words came into the English language, like probably a third of our vocabulary is ultimately French. And then there was the Renaissance, so a bunch of Latin and Greek words came in. And then, of course, there was the age of exploration and colonialism, where people not just from England but from all European countries started traveling around and encountering other people, other languages, and adopting some of them. So a word like well, I grew up in Saskatchewan, and one of my favorite berries from there is called the Saskatoon.
Oh,
Um,
those are good berries.
oh, they're great. They make such great pie. Yeah. Out here, I think people call them service berries. But yeah, Saskatoon, as probably the name sounds,
Can
is
we get Saskatoon berries over here?
well, we do, but they don't call them Saskatoons. At least my friends don't call them that. Service berries, because and I suspect it's called service berries because, they probably really helped the early pioneers because they're very nutritious, lots of vitamin C, stuff like that. Um, and Yeah, so Saskatoon is an indigenous word. I think it's Cree, if I recall correctly, and I believe it means hardwood. If I recall correctly. Um, so yeah, English is just full of words from all languages, and the language of food in particular, because everybody loves food, and we go to another culture and we bring back avocados. The word avocado comes from a language from Central America. I think it's pronounced Nahuatl. And avocado, well, I hope it's okay for me to say this. in
It's an adult show.
in that language, it actually means testicle. Um,
Oh,
so that's often true about some words that they're named after how they appear. Um, yeah, yeah.
so does the avocado actually look like a testicle?
Well, maybe a larger.
I know Miss Liz went there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and then you get into like guacamole, of course, which is made of crushed avocado. Yeah, yeah.
I did see that you wrote a sex book, so we can
Yeah,
talk.
yeah,
We can talk
yeah.
that
That's right.
too.
One of my other books was about the origins and histories of words about sex and love. Um, that was the one book that I didn't give a copy to my mom of.
You might be surprised. She might come back and tell you.
Maybe. Can I mention another thing that's just a little bit off color?
Go ahead.
Okay, so my wife's grandmother, uh, she was just so astute, even into her 80s. She was just such a quick mind, and we gave her a copy. And I remember we were sitting around the table having some dinner, and she started to talk about it. And she said, "I really liked the book, but the chapter about penis words I found too long and hard." This is an 85-year-old woman saying this.
I'm telling you, like you never know, right, where it comes from.
Yeah, yeah, and for me, it's it kind of epitomizes um, my way of being in the world because I love discoveries. I love learning about things, and I'm relentless in looking them up. Like today, one of my colleagues is from Quebec, and she's a francophone. And somehow or other, we started talking about France, and there's a region called Aix-en-Provence. X is spelled AIX, and I said to her, "Where does that word come from? Aix-en-Provence." And she didn't know, so of course I went back and looked it up. It actually comes from a Latin source. It's from aqueous, meaning water, and the part comes from the name Sextius. So there apparently was a Roman ruler, Sextius, and he built some aqueducts in that part of the country. And so Aqueous Sextus became X over time. I mean, that's the thing about language, too, of course, is that words change. And sometimes they can change remarkably, just so that you might look like your sister if you have one. You might look a little bit like one of your parents. You probably don't look much like your grandparents. And then you go further back and probably not even at all. You still have some of those genes, of course.
So I think the chins and noses always come in.
Exactly. Eye color sometimes. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, the my search for discovery and curiosity is what has driven me through life, and even sustained me in challenging times, because there's always stuff to learn. You know.
I'm the same way, right? Like if somebody tells me something and nobody knows the answer, I'm the first one digging it up. I'm just like, really?
Mhm,
Oh wow.
mhm.
It's like Tea Time with Miss Liz. Like it was TEA
Yeah,
for 5 seasons, and I just switched the letter E, but it still means tea.
sure. Yeah,
And the tea that I was given was by my grandma, my Oma from
yeah,
Germany, and tea is spelled TEE in German.
yeah,
So that's all I was doing. I was just playing with letters, right? Taking
yeah,
a
yeah,
letter, putting a letter. I just love making people ask questions, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
Miss Liz, you spelled it wrong. No, it's not spelled wrong.
yeah,
It's just in a different language.
yeah. Well, the word tea, the one that means the beverage, that's an interesting word, because in most languages throughout the world, their word for tea is very similar to tea,
Yeah.
because it was a single thing which very quickly spread around the world. So the original source of it was chai from India, but that became tea, and in our language, and other words. Same thing with coffee. The original coffee, I think, also comes from the same language that avocado comes from, um, Nahuatl. Um, and so most words for coffee around the world in other languages sound similar to coffee. Like in Arabic, I studied Arabic for a while, and in Arabic, the word coffee is kahwa. So
Oh,
you can hear the resemblance.
wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing, eh? How language and letters and words all change, right? But they
Yep.
mean similar stuff.
Yep.
That's why I love using words. I love asking words and getting words from
Hmm.
everybody, because
Hmm.
that's what I was given by my Oma was 3 words, right? Was reflect, recharge, and release.
Oh
And
yeah.
at the age of 4, and I was just like, oh,
Hmm.
what's this woman trying to tell me, right? But
Hmm.
as I got older, I understood that she was giving me a life tea. It
Yeah.
wasn't about the beverage, and that's why I do tea time, right?
Yep.
Because it's not about the beverage; it's about what we serve and how we serve, how we write, what we create,
Yep.
and
Yep.
that as well, right?
Exactly. And I think that makes me think about how, with knowledge, there's different kinds of knowledge. Like I think facts are really important, but also there's another kind of knowledge which is kind of lore. It's lived experience that
Yeah.
other people can give us. And that is so, I mean, I think lore is where wisdom comes from. It's so important to have that, and to
Yes.
have access to people, to elders who have that kind of lore and can pass it on.
Are you deep into ancestry, Mark?
Into what?
To the ancestry, like heritage and stuff?
Um, that's a good question. It's a complicated question, because for me, like the name Morton, my surname Morton is English, but I also have ancestry from Germany and also from Norway. And of
Oh,
those three,
Norway again.
yeah, of those three, the Norwegian is probably the least, you know, component in me, but it's the one that I identify with most. Now, the other thing that kind of complicates it is, having adopted 4 kids, so they're biologically not related to us, genetically not related to us, and all of them sort of have Irish, Scots, English kind of ancestry. But they know that I like to consider myself a Viking, this Norwegian.
You're like me. I got
Yeah,
Norway in me, so I'm like Viking man. I'm not a fighter. I'm good.
exactly. And I've said to them, if you guys want to consider yourself, identify yourself as Norwegian or having some Norwegian, do it. Everybody has the right, I think, to identify themselves as they feel fit. And of course, even in reality, in Norway, of course, people came to Norway from other countries, over the centuries, and they stayed there and they contributed to that Norwegian identity. So that kind of identity, I mean, it's fluid. I don't think of, I don't, for me, I don't think I don't want to think of ancestry as something that is fixed.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and it's complicated, and sometimes I would even say it doesn't matter. You know, there's wars going on, in the world, Palestine and Israel, and sometimes I think if we could only all forget,
Yeah.
all those things, if we could just like reboot a computer, everything would be fine, because it's the fact that people remember this person hurt me, and this goes back and back and back, so if we could just forget,
Well,
and
it's
say,
repeating history, right? Until we
exactly.
fix it, we're just going to keep repeating history.
Yep.
The wars are going to keep coming because we haven't healed from the first war.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's this country did this country, this country did this country, and it's just repeating itself. It's
Goes
that
back and back.
vicious cycle, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just like generational cycle of trauma and abuse, right?
Hmm.
Until we break those cycles and those patterns, we're just going to keep repeating it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the only real solution is, what has been happening with truth and reconciliation processes in various countries. Like I think that originated in South Africa with regard to apartheid, and of course it happened in Canada as well, and I think has done some good work, and I guess all of that sort of falls within the larger sphere of restorative justice. Justice which isn't about I'm going to punish you, but it's rather about we're going to heal together, and that's the way forward, I think.
Well, we have to do it together, right? Not
Yeah.
divided. And that's where I'm finding that today's world, we're being so divided, right? We're talking about diversity and inclusion, but we're
Hmm.
more divided than
Hmm.
ever
Hmm.
now.
Hmm. More polarized, certainly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Mark, let's get into this book because
Sure.
this book was revised in 2004,
Yeah.
and then where did I put it? I put it somewhere in my notes here. In 2003, it was translated into Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, yeah, that astonished me because it's basically a dictionary. It's a dictionary of word origins. And I used to, before it was translated into the Czech language, I used to joke with people saying, oh, maybe this is going to be translated. Because I thought, how do you translate a dictionary? But yeah, a publisher in Prague bought the rights to it and translated it into Czech and published it. It's a beautiful book. They published it as hardcover. It's really, really well done. Um, but I never thought I would see that.
Yeah, do
Yeah,
my homework.
yeah, 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 yeah. It also, I mean, the other thing that I'm proud of about that book, my first book, is that it was one of three books nominated for a category in the Julia Child Award
Hmm.
when it came out. And one of my regrets in life, I had the opportunity to go to the ceremony where they were announcing winners. I think it was happening in Chicago or New York. I forget now. I could have gone, and I didn't. I don't know why, but I really regret that because I could have met Julia Child, and it would have been so nice.
Yeah, we actually have a question that came in about
Hmm.
Julia Child Award.
Yeah.
It says, Cupboard Love is a Julia Child Award nominated work. What was the most surprising food term or organ you discovered while writing it?
Oh yeah, that's a really great question. I mean, I have a handful of really favorites. Um, one of one of my favorites, I guess, is the word funestrata.
Oh.
And the weird thing about funestrata is it's not really a food. And here's the context. It was invented by the American military because they wanted to survey their soldiers to find out what they liked to eat, what they didn't like to eat. And I just have to let my dogs in. One second. Come on. There. And the thing about surveys is that not everybody likes to do them. And so sometimes people will just answer randomly, right? They'll just check, 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 that kind of thing. And so usually what people will do, experts in surveys, they will put in these kinds of questions that will reveal whether the person is really responding or not. So on the food survey that they created, Funestrata was one of the foods, and they said, which do you prefer, Funestrata or baked beans? And anybody who said Funestrata, they knew, well, we can reject that survey. They're not
Oh,
really reading it. So Funestrata doesn't exist. It's never existed. Another
well,
one
that's a
that's
good way to catch them if they really read the book, too.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so I really and Funestrata, it sounds so much like it should be a food. Like it sounds to me, if I imagine what Funestrata was, it would be like some sort of pasta, layered pasta, or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love
I
I
was
love
just like, that doesn't even sound like food because that's too much foodie for me.
Yep, yep. There's another sort of category of words that I like are ones that they're obsolete, and they've often been obsolete for centuries and centuries. Some of them are so obsolete that we don't even know what they were. An example of that is blobsterdis. Um, and we know it's a food because somebody referred to a recipe for it, but they didn't say what it was. So we know that blobsterdis existed, but we don't know how it was made or what was in it.
So is that
Uh,
the lobster biscuit?
well, I wondered that too, but I don't think so. Well, actually, but lobster. I'm going to give you another word. Lobster is an interesting word. It comes from the Latin source locusta, that meant spider or sort of bug more generally, because a lot of people thought that lobsters were sort of the bug of the sea. Um,
Oh, look at that.
yeah, yeah.
You know where I'm going after, right?
Yeah, yeah. Or sometimes foods are named after people. Like probably one that most people know is sandwich. It was named after the Earl of Sandwich. Supposedly, like this is probably a kind of apocryphal, but supposedly the Earl of Sandwich um, he loved to play cards, and he would sit at the table for hours, sometimes days, playing cards and gambling. And he didn't want to leave the table, so he always would say to people, go make me something, take some bread, put some meat on it, blah blah blah, bring it to me. That's why it was named sandwich, because he was known for it. I mean, people obviously ate sandwiches before then, but it didn't really have that name. People would just talk about bread and meat. I would like some bread and meat. um, but the name comes from the Earl of Sandwich. Peach Melba is named after a famous Australian opera singer. Caesar salad is named after a New York restaurant owner who invented it.
You
Um,
know what? I always thought Caesar salad was named after Caesar, the
well,
Roman,
I mean,
the Roman Caesar.
ultimately, it goes back to that. And one of the interesting things about Caesar, well, first of all, is that he himself wouldn't have pronounced his name Caesar. He would have pronounced it Kaiser, because that's just how Latin was pronounced. And that's where the German language gets Kaiser, like there used to be like Kaisers, Kaiser Wilhelm, and so on. And that's also where we get the term Caesarian, as in Caesarean section, because supposedly Julius Caesar, was born that way. And if and of course his mother died, back then, like 2000 years ago. He was cut out of the womb because he was known to be he was going to be such an important person in history. And they thought, well, we got to get him out, we got to save him, even if it means sacrificing his mother. So yeah, Caesarean section comes from that. Yeah, yeah. Language is just astonishing. The levels in it are just crazy.
So, Mark, how did you get the title for that book, Cupboard Love?
Cupboard love. Well, I've got dogs in here now. I opened the door and they came.
Nope, that's good.
And they're good examples of cupboard lovers, because our dogs are very affectionate. One is right under my feet right now. But if I were to go and start to get some cheese, then they're going to come around me, and they're going to, pretend they're going to show a lot of love to me. So that's what cupboard love is. Cupboard love is affection because somebody wants to get a treat. So sometimes it might not even be real love. Like maybe it's a kid wants to get a cookie, and so they're saying, "Oh, Mom, you're so great."
It's
That's
in the cupboard.
yeah, yeah.
Or the cookie jar, right? The cookie
Yep.
jars.
Yep.
My grandkids know it's cookie jars for cookies and stuff like that. Grandma's got canisters all on the counter. Like, what cookie jar is it? Because I like to play with their minds. I like to change the cookies, so they think the chocolate chip cookies are in that one, and then they're actually in this one.
Yeah.
Just to keep them interested.
And canister, by the way, it's obviously related to the word can, but it might not be as self-evident that it's also related to words like cane. And I believe it came from, I believe the original meaning referred to like cane as in, not sugar cane specifically, but that kind of plant that has a round, you
Okay,
know,
yeah,
and
like
then
the
hollow.
bamboo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, bamboo is a good example. And then people started to make similar things, out of clay or tin or whatever. And so that's where the name canister and can came from that idea of something being a kind of hollow cane.
So this cupboard love that you wrote, Mark, it's
Mhm.
like a dictionary, or is it like a
Yeah, it's a
storytelling book
dictionary in
or
the sense that
recipes?
it's alphabetical.
Okay.
The very first word I think is am, which is AAM, and that's an old term that refers to a size of a barrel, a size that you
Oh,
would put butter or something like that in. And the last word in it, I believe, is zuppa inglese, which is an Italian kind of soup. It actually means English soup, but it's because it's from Italian. It's zuppa inglese. Yeah. So
I
yeah,
love,
there's
I love this conversation tonight because this is what my platform is all about, right? Teaching educational awareness, and we're
yeah,
actually learning tonight some
yeah,
English language.
yeah, yeah. And there's some words, that I forgot to put in. It just didn't occur to me. Like I think the word sushi doesn't appear in it. Maybe if there's a fourth edition, I've got a list somewhere of words that are not in it and should be. And sometimes that's because different foods come to the surface. Like dim sum. Dim sum didn't become popular until about the 1970s in North America. So of course that was only then that the name dim sum began to appear.
So what is dim sum?
Dim sum, in terms of the food, it's a Chinese food, and it's tiny little dumplings and small things. And you when you go to a Chinese restaurant, usually on Sunday morning is when they have dim sum, and you'll order. They'll come around with carts, and you'll say, "I'll have that, and all of this, and all of this," and they're all little small things. And the name dim sum, literally in I forget if it's Cantonese or Mandarin, means speck heart. Heart,
Oh,
as a because the idea is that it's a tiny little thing that is good for your heart. It's going to nourish you. Um, so yeah, I love dim sum. I haven't had it for a while, but it's one of my favorite foods, and I do
I
love fruit.
love Chinese, so I'm gonna go and check it out. I'm gonna
Yeah,
look
yeah.
at
On
it.
Saturday,
So
on a morning, it's usually served in the morning. I don't think I've ever been to a restaurant where I've seen dim sum served, for supper or dinner. Um,
so it's like a breakfast food.
yeah, breakfast, mid morning, brunch kind of thing. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
And speaking of supper and dinner, like I grew up in the prairies, and that late meal, that sort of 6 p.m. meal, I always called supper. But then I came out to Ontario, where I am now, Kitchener Waterloo area, and it seems like most people out here call it dinner. And to me, dinner is like the noon meal.
yeah, that's what I would think too. I come from
Yeah.
up north, right in Hearst,
Oh
Ontario.
yeah.
So supper was supper time. Like get
Yeah.
to the supper table.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Dinner was lunchtime. Like get to the lunch table. Like
Yeah. Yeah. But
uh,
sometimes I've encountered people here, and I'll say, "Well, I'm gonna have this for supper," and they'll say, "Supper? What is that?" It's like I'm speaking like a very old.
a different language.
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting because dinner we'll say I'm dining, or I'm gonna dine with so and so, but we would never say I'm gonna sup with so and so. Like sup is the verb form of supper, and that's been pretty much lost in English. Like sup appears in Shakespeare. Shakespeare often uses that word, but we don't use it in contemporary English now.
Well, and we have so many slang words out there
Yeah.
too, right?
Yeah, 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 exactly. Language is always changing, always evolving, and it's interesting. Since sort of the age of global communications, that has really helped to spread English. I mean, colonialism did as well, but telecommunications and Hollywood, and things like that, and then the internet. I mean, the language of the internet in a way is English. Um, just because it's sort of that powerhouse. And so that also has led to the spread of English, um, and to the changes in English. Like there are places like in Singapore, where English has adopted so many words from Chinese languages and also from Portuguese, because the Portuguese had a big influence in Singapore, that they now call it Singlish because it's almost become a different language. You know, it's English, but it's English with these other things added into it and changed. And that's how languages work. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if in 5 generations people might have difficulty understanding this. Hey, you guys.
They're doing a tap dance in the back.
Yeah, they're little toenails. Yeah, just like I mean, we can go to a Shakespeare play. We can go to Hamlet or whatever. And I studied Shakespeare. I used to teach Shakespeare. But most people, you know, after they have sat in the audience for a while, they adapt and they can follow, you know, Shakespeare's English. But if they go further back, if they go back to like the 1400s and Chaucer is pretty hard. It's not impossible, but it's much harder for someone like from our day to understand and read. And then, of course, if you go even further back to Anglo-Saxon, like there's the great poem Beowulf, it's impossible for somebody English speaker to read that unless they study it like as a foreign language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you also wrote a book called Shakespeare, Cooking with Shakespeare.
Cooking with Shakespeare. Yeah. I wrote that with a friend, Andrew Coppolino, and because he has a sort of a chef background and I had the language background. And so basically it's about food culture in Shakespeare's England. So food culture from about 1564 when Shakespeare was born to 1616 when he died. And it's about what they ate, how they prepared their food, what kind of spices they used. Like we mentioned lobster earlier on, and they wouldn't eat lobster. To them, lobster was like be like eating a crow or something. It was only poor people would have eaten lobster back then.
And now today it's the rich people who eat
Exactly,
lobster.
exactly. And the number of birds that they ate very commonly back then. Oh, I'm getting some sun on me here. The number of birds that they ate, like they ate sparrows and wrens, and we even came across recipes for peacock. You know, yeah, they were very adventurous when it came to eating birds, and of course, back then, at least during the reign of Queen Mary, they were called sumptuary laws. And so you couldn't eat fish on Fridays because you couldn't eat meat on Fridays. You had to eat fish because Queen Mary wanted to kind of bolster or support the fishing industry. But one thing that they allowed people to eat that we would consider meat, you know, the bird called the puffin. It's kind of a Arctic or bird.
Is that the one with the big yellow beak?
No, maybe that's a toucan.
Oh yes, the toucan.
Yeah, but a puffin, it's a strange bird, and it can swim like crazy. Like it will dive underwater and swim.
Oh,
and so
I seen it on Happy Feet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so because it's such a water bird, they considered it basically a fish, and so you were allowed to eat puffin on Fridays because it was close enough to being a fish.
Yeah, because the puffin was in Happy Feet. He was the guy
That's
with
right.
the plastic around his throat or
Exactly.
something that they had to save him from.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm giving my ages away here because I got grandkids that watch Happy Feet.
Oh, and I don't know if you can hear my dogs playing here. I can quiet them down if you want. But it makes me think of another thing. Dogs in kitchens back then, like the aristocrats. Hey, you guys, Jasper, come here. I mean, the aristocrats, the rich people ate very, very differently than the poor people. The poor people basically just ate oatmeal and gruel and deer if they could, you know, poach one from the king's land, stuff like that. But rich people, it was a way of showing your wealth by eating all different kinds of very exotic things. And I was going to say about the dogs. And so they would have these huge kitchens and they would have spits, you know, that you would rotate, you know, that you put a chicken or whatever, some venison on it, and you would rotate it. But instead of having a person rotating it so it wouldn't burn. They often would have like little treadmills, and a dog would be walking on the treadmill in order to make the spit turn.
Oh,
You know,
well, look at
can
that.
you imagine?
We had the dogs working back then.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, even for most people, the idea of even having a dog in a kitchen would turn them off. But yeah, they
Minor
made
exercise, right?
exactly, exactly.
It was the old way of walking a dog.
Yeah. Get them their exercise. Yeah, yeah,
Ah,
yeah.
y- what got you into history, Mark?
I think, like I mentioned, I grew up on a farm in Saskatchewan, and it was a pretty poor little farm. But one thing we had were what was this set of encyclopedias. They were called the Books of Knowledge, and they were from like 1918, I think. They probably belonged to my father's father or grandfather or something like that. And we had those, and I loved reading them. They were kind of like contemporary encyclopedias nowadays. Like
They
you
were
could
like those little wooden books, right? Like that.
not like that. Like they were paper bound, and they had well, what distinguished them is that they not only had facts, or what were considered facts back then, but they also had stories, and most of the stories were about famous people, you know, Louis Pasteur and things like that. And I loved reading about them. I'm pretty sure I read those 1918 books of knowledge back to back, you know. And yeah, I think that just got me interested, and I've loved learning about history and language and food culture generally ever since then. I also like physics. Like when I started university, I was actually enrolled in the physics program at the University of Regina because I really loved physics. But then I got decided to move over into studying English literature. But even now, I love watching YouTube videos about physics.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me too, like with the teacups and so that it's the history, right? Who
Mhm.
created them, who built them, who painted them, who
Yep.
drank from them,
Yep.
right? How
Yep.
many generations were they passed down? It's all of those stories that you took those cups and had a cup of tea, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
That's what really intrigues me about tea stuff, like
Yep.
teapots and stuff like
Yep.
that. Like,
Yep. And of course, China, you know, it gets its name because it was imported from China. But another word that has a more interesting origin is porcelain. Like porcelain is a kind of china, you know. And the por part of that actually is related to pork. It means pig, because porcelain was, maybe still is, made out of bones. And so they would take pig bones and, you know, grind them up, I guess, and they would use that. And so porcelain and pork and even porcupine all come from the same source.
porcupine is actually good. I'm gonna have a few viewers that are Miss Liz. Yes, I've had porcupine.
Have you really?
Yes, I have.
Really?
Yes.
Oof, I've never had anything that exotic.
Yeah.
But the name, yeah, porcupine means like pig needle. You know, it's pork, and then the pine is in pin, pig pin, I guess. Sort of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did you have porcupine?
My grandma made it on the farm.
Hmm.
Must have been in 1980, 81, 82. She made porcupine.
Hmm.
I think somebody hit the porcupine and she was
Hmm.
just like, it's not going to waste.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then she said, well, I'll just try it, right? It's got to be like the rest of the meat out there. So she
Yeah.
just cooked it up and it was actually pretty good.
We had a neighbor on the farm who would, you know, if somebody hit a deer or something, we would call him, or somebody would call him and say, you know, there's a dead deer on the side of the road. He would go get it, and he would slaughter it, or I guess not slaughter it at that point, but you know, do whatever, dress it. I think that's the
Yeah.
word. Yeah. And there was another guy. You know, our prime minister used to be the head of the Bank of Canada, right?
Yes.
And before him, well, probably a few times before him, there was a guy named Gerald Bowie. He was born and grew up in this little small town in Saskatchewan. He became the the head of the Bank of Canada for a while. His father was very adventurous in eating. His father would eat crows and probably porcupine and things like that, raccoon. Yeah, it's just The most exotic thing that I think I have had is I mentioned that I've studied Arabic, and I went to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia a few times to give some workshops in um, learning technologies. And once I was at this kind of banquet, and it was one of those silver domes, and I lifted it up, and I thought, "What in the world is that?" And then I realized that's a brain. It was a sheep's brain, a boiled sheep's brain,
Oh,
and it still looked had all those crenellations on it and stuff like that. I didn't try it. I couldn't bring myself to try it, but I think I
well,
took.
they have these dating places where they blindfold you and they make you eat food to
Oh
see if
yeah,
you can taste it. Like,
yeah,
and I'm just like, yeah, that's the only way I'm eating some of that stuff is if you blindfold me because I
yeah,
can't get over the look of it. I'm just like,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
no.
I have had camel milk when I was there, um, but yeah, I've had camel milk, goat milk, cow milk. Of course, I don't think I've had mother's milk, but I don't think I've had any other kind of milk.
There's a lot of different milks out there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, here's another story though. My youngest brother, um, when he was probably 3, this is going to sound awful, but yeah, grew up on a farm and not a lot of. It was a pretty primitive situation, let's say. And my brother Kelly, we had a dog named Zip, and Zip was always having puppies. And one day we look over, and there's Kelly on the floor, and he is nursing off of Zip, who had just given puppies. Oh man,
Well, it had milk.
yeah, yeah, dog milk. Yeah, yeah. That was very
That's before the internet started, right? All those stories. Like,
exactly,
can you
exactly.
imagine if we had the internet back when we did our crazy
Hmm.
things? Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm so glad that we didn't have internet for some stuff.
Yeah, yeah. It's great, but it's
So,
also
Mark,
awful.
we're almost at the end here, so I want
Sure.
to get a couple.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want to get a couple of these questions into you, but I also want to get in because when you sent me your word to describe yourself, you
Oh,
gave
yeah,
me a
yeah,
word, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. I want to know." So you gave me the word twilight.
yeah. Twilight, I think, is my favorite word in English. It's not a food word, of course, but I love the way it sounds, like twilight. And I love what it is. It's a space between two things. It's a space between night and day, and I love those kinds of liminal spaces because they're magical. And I the people in the world that I find most interesting are similar. They're the ones that are sort of they're not this, they're not that, they're between. It's a hard place to be sometimes. It's but that builds character and makes people interesting. So yeah, I love the word twilight.
So that describes you in a heartbeat, right?
I think so. I think so.
You're a
Yeah,
twilight.
it captures one of my um, captures how I like to be in the world, I guess. Yeah, yeah. I can't
Yeah.
remember the other words.
I when I got the word, I was just like, oh, that's interesting. I love when I get words because I have people that say, Miss Liz, that's a hard question
Mm-hmm,
to describe myself in one word.
hmm.
Some people are like, let me really think about it. And then strong,
Yeah,
resilient, courage, And when I got Twilight, I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. We're going to have
yeah,
something to talk
yeah,
about.
yeah. It's interesting to try to get people to think more metaphorically about a
Yes.
word or a thing that would describe them.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that can be a source of kind of self-discovery too. Like when you asked me that, and I said, "Oh, Twilight." I thought, why do I like that? And I thought about how it's this kind of middle space between things.
Well, it
Yeah,
kind of goes with the cooking
hmm.
and the food, right? The
Exactly.
curiosity, right, of the
Yep.
twilight,
Yeah,
understanding what the
exactly.
twilight is.
Yeah, and I think that's what curiosity is because you already know something, but you also want to know more. You're always kind of trying to advance, and you never get to the end. You never learned everything,
Yeah,
but you're always in a space of finding out more. Hopefully,
it's like the twilight. It's
yeah,
endless, right? It's in
yeah,
the universe.
yeah.
So
And I love the Twilight Zone as a show.
that was actually a good show. They should bring it back.
Oh, it was wonderful. It was wonderful. So thoughtful, and it raised philosophical and moral questions. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Mark, for your T, you gave me authenticity, unlearning, and self.
Yeah.
Why those three
Um,
words?
Unlearning, because I think a lot of the learning that we have to do is actually unlearning. And well, I guess what I mean is this. I grew up in a time when colonialism, we didn't even call it colonialism. It was
Yeah.
just how things were, right? It was like the white people are the best civilization, it was just taken for granted. And as time went on and we made progress as humans, we realized, well, that's not the case. Colonialism was pretty bad in a lot of ways. And so I think we need to do a lot of unlearning, and that other cultures are just as valuable, just as important as whatever culture, I grew up in or we grew up in. So we have to unlearn a lot of things in that way. Um, and authenticity, I think, was one of the other words.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's really important to be authentic, to be one's authentic self. I think it also makes it easier to kind of move through the world, because you don't have to be always thinking, I gotta be this person, I gotta pretend to be this person and create this self. You just are, and people can like you or not. What was the third word that I chose?
Self.
Self. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was interested with that word self.
Yeah. I mean, we are all selves. Each one of us has a self. And I sometimes find it interesting to think about how everybody is walking around. I'm walking down the street and everybody around me thinks of themselves as a self. They're all thinking, I am me.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, we're all individuals. We're all separate. We can't even get inside each other's minds. What you see for blue might be different than what I see for blue, for example. But on the other hand, we're all united because we all have selves and we're all trying to be in this universe that we found ourselves getting born into.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the older I get, the more I think the world and living and being and the universe is a mystery. That and depending on the day, I sometimes think it's a good mystery and sometimes think it's a bad mystery.
Yeah. Well, kind of your T kind of, kind of like does that flip, does that saute?
Mhm.
Because the
Yep.
unlearning, right,
Yep.
of self to become
Yep.
authentic,
Yep.
right? And then you put it all together and it's to be your one self,
Yep.
you know. But we're
Exactly.
so afraid of being authentic because in today's world, what is authentic?
Hmm.
Right? We're
Hmm.
being told that we need to be doing it this way, we need to look this way, we need to say this, you
Yeah.
know, I
Yeah.
mean, freedom of speech is being taken from us.
Hmm.
Censorship is coming in. A lot of people are all confused in that.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
how do you be authentic when you're always being programmed to don't do that, don't say
Yeah.
this, don't,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the things that my wife and I tried to instill in our kids, I think, was be authentic, be yourself. Because ultimately, that's all we got, you
yeah.
know?
Like I tell everybody, I am who I am. If you don't like me, you don't like me. If you like me, you like
Yeah.
me. And I don't
Yeah.
want to be everybody's cup of tea, right? Because then
Exactly. Yeah.
if I'm
Yeah.
everyone's cup of tea, then am I really being authentic?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's like Popeye used to say, the cartoon, I am what I am.
With a good can of spinach.
Yeah.
We're kind of giving our ages away here, but
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So, Mark, is there any new books coming our way, or
Uh, well, yeah, I've completed another novel, like my first YA novel. It came out last year. Was a dystopian novel, sort of a yeah, speculative dystopian novel. And I've completed another one, but it's not YA. It's not for young adults. It's more of just an adult dystopian novel. Um, I like to think of it as kind of on TV. There's a series. What's it called? The Last of Us. I don't know if you've
okay?
seen that on Netflix.
Yes,
And I really like it because it's telling a good story, but at the same time, it's raising lots of issues and questions, and it explores a lot of gray areas, kind of like the Twilight Zone, like we were saying. Um, and that's what I want to do with my fiction is not just tell a story. I mean, telling a good story
Yeah.
if it's not a good story, who's going to read it? But I also want to create a world in which important questions are raised and considered. So yeah, that's what this new but unpublished novel is trying to do. So yeah, I'm trying to find a publisher for it. It's called The Darkening Sun. That's the title that I
Oh,
have for it.
nice title. I like
Yeah,
that because the other one is the Headmasters.
yeah, yeah.
So
That's right.
I was
Yeah.
when I checked out your books, I was like, okay, he's got food, sex. I'm like,
Yeah.
this guy's all over it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and another one was about. It was called The End. That was my second book, I think, and it was about. It came out in 1999 at the end of the 20th century, of course, and it was about how people at the ends of previous centuries, 1899, 1799, 1699, how they celebrated or wrote about the end of their century.
Oh.
So it was kind of a history and culture uh, work of nonfiction. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have the lover's tongue is the
Yeah.
language of love and sex,
Yes. Yes.
and that's something that I bring on tea time a lot because we don't talk about sex and
Hmm.
healthy intimacy and stuff like that as well,
Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
is that what that's in that book, or is that another dictionary where it's just a bunch
It's
of different
it's
words? Or?
similar to Cupboard Love, but it's not alphabetical. It's
Okay.
sort of chapter by chapter. Um, I start pretty tame with words. I think the first chapter is terms of endearment, like why do terms of endearment tend to be food based? Sweetheart, crumpet, honey. Even in French, they say mon petit chou. My little cabbage. Like, why is that? And then the next chapter is probably words that mean love, things like that, words that mean desire. And then as chapters go on, they become more explicit.
So
So
is it like breakfast, lunch, dinner,
I never thought of
and
that.
then nightcap?
Yeah, I never thought of that. But yeah, so interesting thing about that book, it did pretty well and got good reviews. Like it was widely reviewed. A publisher in the UK bought the rights to it. My publisher didn't tell me that, and they actually changed the title when they published it in the UK. They called it. It's called "Dirty Words: The Story of
Oh,
Sex Talk," and I didn't. I mean, I thought it was weird that I wasn't told that they had changed the title, but they know their market. They're a people that like shows like Benny Hill, and so calling it "Dirty Words" is probably a good marketing move. Yeah,
Benny Hill was pretty cool.
yeah, yeah. I mean, anything you film somebody and then speed them up, whatever they're doing, it becomes funny.
Yeah. Well, and we do that in today's world, right? We make a video 5 minutes and we make it into 30 seconds, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right.
So we
Yeah,
speed it up. So
yeah.
Mark, one last question, and then I'll
Mhm.
get you to say your last couple of words.
Sure.
Uh, Give me one moment in your life that has made a huge difference in your life.
Hmm. Okay. There's lots, but one would be my wife and I. First, we adopted two kids, Brandon and Leica, and after about 3 years, we thought, well, we actually weren't thinking about adopting more kids. We were asked by a Family and Children's Service agency to go to this event where people who were interested in adopting kids, they could hear. So we went with our kids and we were on this panel, and Brandon and Leica could give their perspective of what it was like to be adopted and things like that. And after it was over, there were tables set up, and on the tables, and this is kind of awful in a way, on the tables were these one pagers, each one devoted to a different child. This is so and so likes this, and blah blah blah. It's almost like buying a car or something like that. But
Oh wow.
kids need to be adopted. Anyways, so we happened to be walking by this one table and saw this one flyer, if I can call it that, for twins, and we looked and thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. And that's what prompted us to follow up, and we ended up adopting those kids, Matthew and Roxana. So that moment, I like to think about how our lives would be different if our eyes hadn't happened to light on that flyer on that table. I can't imagine our life without those kids.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it was chance. Oh, it was chance or it was destiny. I don't know. Maybe those are the same things.
Yeah. I believe in the universe. Universe brings people to me, and I'm just like, what?
Hmm.
What do I need those people for?
You'll find out. Yeah.
Then you're like, oh, well, thank you. That was a blessing. Or, oh my goodness, did I learn a lesson there?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Mark, what are your final words? And for people to reach out and get your books and all that, where can they find that?
Uh, well, okay, I'll start with the second one. All of my books, well, except the one about the ends of centuries, that's out of print now, but they're all available on Amazon, or Barnes and Noble or Chapters. They have them. I even saw the other day online. It's you can get it at Walmart, which kind of surprised me. You can also get your local bookstore. They need support. They can order it in for you. It'll take a week or so probably, but all of those things are available. My website is markmorton.ca, and it all my books are listed there and described. In terms of final words, boy, I don't know.
We've been talking words all night, and he's
Yeah.
and he's speechless.
Yeah. Well, when I think of final words, today for some reason, I was thinking about the German poet Goethe and his final words, like his dying words. Apparently, he was in his bed, dying, and I guess maybe his vision started to fail, and he shouted, "Light, more light." So literally, he wanted more light, but also always seeking more enlightenment, things like that. And that got me thinking about, last words. And I thought, what are my last words going to be? What's the last thing I'm going to say? Who knows?
Yeah.
I could die in a hospital bed or
Well, don't say your final words.
and then I have to do it. Yeah. But we don't know, or a piano could fall on my head, but
There's
we're
no
all
pianos anywhere near you, is there?
not right now. But we're all going to have last words, and we don't know what they're going to be. Supposedly Oscar Wilde, the English playwright and amazing guy, supposedly his last words were, either that wallpaper goes or I do. And there was somebody else, I forget who it was, written on his tombstone is, I told you I was sick.
You didn't believe me.
Yeah.
And that's where we talked about this afternoon with Linda. We got to bring in dark humor sometimes, right? We got to bring in the jokes because, life gets heavy. And,
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Well, it's like, the Leonard Cohen song, Ring the Bells That Still Can Ring. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in, through those cracks, through brokenness,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we talked about those as well this afternoon. Broken. That's what I mean. The universe, my guests always align in the afternoon and evening. And you guys don't even know what we talked about. And
No.
it just happens to come out. Well, I really want to thank you, Mark, for joining me tonight on Tea Time. And thank you to the viewers on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and for all of the people that joined in the studio, and people who sent questions along. I will pass those questions on to Mark because we got into a good conversation. So I will send those questions to you, Mark, and you can answer them and then send them back to me. And I'll get them out to everybody that sent them in. But that's what I mean. Tea time, we never know what flow we're serving, right? So, and I really enjoyed tonight's conversation.
Me too. I really enjoyed it. Thanks, Liz.
So again, thank you so much. And I'll be back same time, same place, Tuesday, Thursday, 3 p.m., 7 p.m., and we'll do it all over again. So stay tuned for that, and stay tuned to the Golden Heart moments that are coming. Miss Liz has a couple surprises that are still coming this month. So until then, I will wish you guys all a beautiful weekend, and I will see you on Tuesday.